So here you've got your regular 208cc Craftsman engine. I've already started kind of taking it apart, but this video is just to show you how to get everything apart, get down to the carburetor to get it clean. There are 10mm bolts that you will need a open-end wrench for, something like this. I use the 10mm socket on the end of an impact for the two up front here. But 10mm is what you're going to need, and then you'll need a pair of pliers or needle nose pliers, either way, and then a screwdriver, flathead. So there's two 10mm bolts here, one down here on the side, and then you'll have either one or two in this area here. That's what you'll need the open-end wrench for. Usually once you get them loose, they'll come right out by hand. I apologize, you do also need a Phillips head screwdriver. There's two bolts over here that you'll take out. If it's not electric start, there'll just be one bolt in here. From there, you get the two off the front. As I said, I already had everything loosened up. These knobs are what everyone has an issue with. The easiest way to get these off is to make sure, and I've already loosened this one up a little bit so I could hold the camera, but make sure it's turned all the way to choke. And then what you'll do is you want to get under it here, and of course it's really tight at first, so use your other hand and kind of get it under. And you'll get it under in the back here. There's like a little plate in the middle. You get it under that and you can just pry outwards. It pops right off there. So this one here you can do one of two ways. I've used a pair of pliers forever to grab onto here and pull it off. It's also quite simple, it seems, to get it off once you get the muffler off. So the muffler here, you basically want to push down and then pull out to get it out of this groove here. And then it'll pull up just the slightest bit, enough for you to pull that whole plastic out. Some units you will actually have to take this bar off in order to pull the plastic out because they're really close. Luckily this unit isn't one of them. To do that, all you have to do is take these 1/2" bolts here loose in order to get a little bit more flex here. So pull this here, so that if you pull on it real hard, you're not going to break anything. Your breather here will pop off. That's kind of what's holding on deep in there. Then you've got your primer line here. Just get him off. Alright, so you're all set there. The only other thing you have is your knob. And I'm going to put this down here for 1 second. Not sure if this is going to pick me up or not, but I grab here and here and pull it. That'll pull it right off for you. Again, not sure if that was picked up, but basically I grabbed at the bottom side here and at the top side here and just pulled, and that'll pull that second knob out. As long as your primer line's off, everything else will be able to pop out and away from the unit. So you never disconnect any of this wiring, never take the bolts out of the top. It's much easier just to leave it like that. That's the first mistake most people make. So from there, you've just got your linkage for your choke. Honestly, these gaskets aren't real important. You know, if they're damaged, you know, here, it pulls from the air anyway. There's no air filter on these things, so you don't tend to get a lot of dust when you're blowing the snow. Not too important. We always make sure they're replaced or in good shape, but put your needle nose pliers come in here. Usually on the bottom side, and that's where you'll have to reset it, otherwise it'll hit the choke. So easiest way to get the fuel line off here, I usually go up a little bit and try to turn. Once you get it to turn, it'll usually pop off pretty quick. I did this video not long ago on carburetor cleaning, and I did not include instructions for taking it apart. I had a few different requests for that, so still to this day I use an ice cream bucket and a hose to drain fuel. Once you get this off of here, pry it off a little bit. Make sure not to damage it, of course. And then I usually just throw it right down. Throw it in my drain tube, right down into my bucket. And you're pulling off your carb here. You pull out. I usually take the spring off first. And then your linkage will come up and out. Carburetor is free, and so is my fuel line going all over the floor here. So that's always good. I'm gonna get set up and do the carburetor cleaning here. So here we just pulled it off. I loosened this is a 10 millimeter on the bottom of the carburetor also. Usually gets pretty nasty down in there and not real clean. Got a little bit of junk in it. So if you take that apart, your pin out here for your float. A lot of times this happens where they kind of get stuck down in there. You want to not try to force too hard because you can break your float here. I've seen it also bend the needle, so just be very careful if it's stuck in there. You know, this thing has stuff all over it, so obviously that's why it's not running. You can take this off of here. This one would need, at the very least, if you were cleaning it at home, it would need soaked overnight in like a gum out heavy duty carb cleaner. It's pretty dirty. You know, aftermarket carburetors for these things aren't too much. I would recommend at least going that route. Maybe on something like this if you don't have an ultrasonic cleaner or you don't have the time to put into it. Here I'm taking out my top jet. Take out the low idle screw there. And then the easiest way is to use a screwdriver and pry up here. So I've got that here. Straight down through here there is a hole. Looks like you can see it there, but it's actually just full of fluid. So you do want to make sure that's cleaned out. That's one of the huge ones on this. Make sure your needle is all clean and it's seating properly. You can check that just by blowing through it afterwards. After you're done, I'll show you that. Down through here, there's a jet down the middle. Takes a flathead screwdriver. You got to make sure it's a good fit for it. Otherwise, that brass likes to strip out. So you basically just unscrew that all the way that you can here. It doesn't like to thread all the way out until the end. Usually I just take it and beat it on something. There's your bottom jet. Sometimes the jet through will come out. You can still see it in the middle down there. That, if you use a screwdriver just down through, you can usually just kind of pry it out of there. That one will work real well. A little different of a screwdriver, I guess. Wow. I've never seen one that's stubborn to come out of there, but I'm going to throw it in the cleaner like this. I'm sure I can get that cleaned down through there. Main jet here. See nothing through it. It's completely clogged. So that, along with the float, was the issue. I'm going to throw it here in the ultrasonic cleaner. I gather everything up here. I usually leave this out, at least the gasket around it, that way it doesn't get completely ruined. Ultrasonic cleaner doesn't do it too bad, but it does kind of soften it up a little bit, so I usually just leave it out. Use a little basket to hold everything here. Into the cleaner. So after the ultrasonic, we got that thing here. I've sprayed down in it a little bit. The jet did eventually come out. You want to look through the holes here, down through all of these, and make sure that you can see directly through them. I've already done it. If you get light on the back side of it, it's easier to see through a lot of times, but you want to make sure that there's nothing blocking it straight down through either one of them here. You want to spray straight down through there, all around in here. We use a wire brush to brush this out, just a little nylon one. You can also use regular old torch tip cleaners. Find the size you need, but you want to make sure there's nothing down in here at all, because otherwise your float and your needle will get stuck and overflow into your crankcase. So also very important, make sure there's nothing left on your needle, that the tip is in good shape and everything. Your spring's intact, not ruined. So you put the carburetor all back together just the way you took it apart, and then we'll reinstall it. So I wanted to kind of show you the nice easy test before you get this thing back together. Once you have, I've got the needle and the spring, the pin and everything installed in the float, you can blow through this with it being upside down. See if you can blow through it. If you cannot blow through it, it's probably sealing right. Lift it up beyond that, you should be able to blow through it very easily. You can also, with it being down, suck on it and see if it holds pressure, like with your tongue or your cheek against it. Obviously clean it off real well. You don't want gas or carburetor cleaner in it. We usually use gum out. Just seems to be the stuff that, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't burn your eyes as much. Straight down through here also, if you shine light in the side here, in your little hole, you can see there's a brass jet in there. You should be able to see light down through there, shining light on the inside. You can also clean that out with a tiny little wire brush. I actually use pieces of wire brush because it's such a tiny hole. But clean that out. If it's not clean, your snowblower will surge a lot. So you reinstall all that in there. Your jets come out exactly this, or go in exactly the same way they came out. If you weren't paying attention to when your jet came out here, the longer skinny end goes down like that. And then obviously you'll screw that back in tight. I mean, don't crank on it real hard, but you do want it in there nice and snug. When you're putting the bowl back on, you always want to make sure that your drain is on the opposite side of your intake of the fuel. So when it's on, this will be facing to the outside here. So you can actually remove that drain screw. Anyway, you want to make sure this gasket at the back here is not ripped or torn when you take it out. That is a very important gasket. I know I told you the front ones don't matter that much, but that one definitely does. So to get this all back in here, usually seems easiest if you grab your spring. Kind of hard one-handed. So you put your spring back in there as such, and then you'll want your carburetor out in order to get that back down in there. You just kind of line it up and push it down until it's able to move freely on there. It goes down in. Hook your fuel line back up. When you put your fuel line back on, double jointed ones, when you put your fuel line back on here, you want to make sure that the clamp is at the bottom. Otherwise, when you put your choke back on here, it'll hit and rub. You've got one gasket, and then you got your choke plate here. This is the way the linkage goes. If it gets out of here, just make sure you put it back. And then it just goes in through here, bends down, and then you line it up. So a lot of times you'll have to move the position of this here. I started it over here. You move the position of this here until you get it lined up. Once she's lined up, other gasket. And then you'll proceed to put everything else back together. Comes off, goes back on just the way it came off. So you get this all together here. I find it easiest to get my choke down in there, lined up first through the hole. Once you do that, you come over here, kind of hold it in place with your one hand. You come over here and you can line up on the inside there. You can see where the bolt lines up here. So you just got to move it, kind of get it in, and then down through to the other one too. Slightly push it on. I pushed it on a little too far. Once you get it back on, you're going to want to reinstall here your primer line. You can usually get it up top. I can grab with a pair of needle nose right down on there. Mess with your clamp, get him back down on there. And then it all pushes back together. When you're to this point, you've got to lift your muffler up and out like you did the first time and kind of get it underneath. Hold it in. She'll snap down in place there. Muffler's back in place there. You want to make sure you get your wires out of the way here. The one that's coming down, make sure you're not pinching any of your cords. Your intake will go back on the tube underneath here. Usually it slides back on. Sometimes people have issues with it, but now you just install your 2 bolts here to put your throttle and stuff back on here. So the fully flat part will go up as you're pushing it back on, and you'll just line it up here. So you line it up, the top flat part, line it up there, and then it just pushes on there. Same with the other one. You will line it up, find it on the floor here. You'll line it up here. And then I usually take a pretty big hammer and just beat it this way one time and it'll push right on. But you want to tighten everything else up first. So it's all back together. Throw some gas in it. Prime it a couple times. she is. Back running like a champ.